All right. Good afternoon. Welcome to the webinar on aligning your financial planning with the S&OP process. My name is Olivier Neutens. I'm project manager at Solventure, and I'll be guiding you through the webinar this afternoon. First of all, I'll give a brief introduction of Solventure. What do we do as a company? I'm also joined by Romain Loquet, who is the operations manager at Certis Europe. He will give a brief introduction about the company itself, then why Certis is also aligning their financial planning with the S&OP process, their main reasons for doing that. Then I'll just give a brief expose about why it's important to do the alignment and what are certain pitfalls and advantages. Then Romain will take over and provide a short demo of how is Certis now handling this alignment within the Archiva tool. What are the results they have? What's the experience they have in doing the exercise? And then what are the next steps? And then at the end, there will be some time to handle a couple of questions and answers by Romain and myself. All right, short introduction on Solventure. So Solventure operations are mainly focused on the S&OP process. And in all of our projects, there are four main pillars we address, which is the people, the process, the tools, and analytics. Of course, the people are the ones who are going to effectively execute the process and any process. So they need to be on board, well informed, and as aligned as possible with the whole process targets and goals. The process itself, and the goal is to guide the people and to make sure the activities are done in a structural way. What Solventure there does is challenge the customer's current process and go for as good process as possible based on our insights, our experiences, and also lessons learned at other customers. The third pillar is the tool, which is in our case always linked to the Archiva S&OP suite, which is a tool that's been developed by Archiva, which is a US-based company, which also has different branches in Europe, in Antwerp, in Belgium, and then also in India, so they have a global coverage. It's a tool that's focused completely on S&OP, and that's the tool where we are as Solventure, the main channel partners in Europe of Archiva itself. The tool enables us in the fourth pillar, which is the analytics. It offers a wide range of different analysis that we can do that are also well structured within the tool itself. I won't spend too much time on the introduction. Next, there are 6 different domains or sub-processes of the S&OP process, where each of these domains has activities which can be linked to a specific Archiva module and which all merit a specific approach. The topic today, which is the integration with finance, is not linked to any specific or exclusively to any one of these specific domains. It's more, it can be applied to any one of these, but you can find one dedicated module at the right bottom corner where we have the financial rolling budgeting, which is then considered as a part of the executive S&OP. But as I mentioned, financial integration is relevant within each and every one of these domains. Some of our customers, so you can find Certis in the utmost left column within the chemical and process industries. Of course, there are also customers in discrete and high-tech and food and CPG industries. Last and certainly not least, there's 2 different branches within Solventure where I'd like to focus the attention on as well very briefly, which is Solventure Academy. The goal of Solventure Academy is to really increase the level of knowledge and expertise within the customers by giving in-house dedicated and really custom-made training sessions within companies on each one of the domains of the S&OP process. And then next to that is Solventure Live, which is actually taking a next step in the forecasting process by also incorporating external leading indicators to get a better view of the future of the activities within your company. Then I'll let Romain do an introduction of Certis Europe.
Thank you, Olivier. Good afternoon. I am Romain Loquet. I'm the operation manager at Certis Europe. I'm in charge of the supply chain with a very strong focus on the S&OP process, and with also, how do you say, a strong background in terms of a system process, because previously I used to be in charge of all reporting and consolidation, so I have a financial background. So Certis. So Certis is a full service development and marketing company really distributing crop protection solution in Europe. So we are dealing in the agriculture. Our customer, the end customer, the end user is really the agriculture business. Next slide, please. Okay, our mission is to we want to be a leading alternative to the main player, to the multinational, for selected crops and countries, and where we provide, we want to provide to our customers some access to some product choice and crop protection solution to build their business. So in fact, we are not big, we are middle-sized company, and we really try to be flexible and to provide solutions for our customer and to show some flexibility compared to the main competitor. Next slide, please. Okay, so in fact, we are dealing with portfolio internally, where we take care of some seed treatment, potatoes, trees and vines, arable crop, biorational, soft chemicals. And in fact, what we try to do is that for each of those portfolio, we have a dedicated strategy. Next slide, please. Okay. In fact, our main activity, we are mainly in the chemical industry. We have a big part which is very important, is the registration, where we need to coordinate, manage the product registration at local level, but also at European level. So as you know, we are part of we are located, our activities mainly in Europe, and we are supposed to be aligned, but it's not the case. So you have different level of registration, which kind of create some complexity. We also do some production and logistics. So that's what I'm in charge of. Some supply chain group. We coordinate the productions and logistic activity through standard tools company. That's something that Certis does not own, does not have own factory to make the product. We use third parties who are making the product on our behalf. So that's why also the S&OP process in the planning is very important. Product development, of course, we support some product registration on introductions. And of course, we do have some sales and marketing activities through established distribution network for market. Next slide, please. Okay. One element also that I wanted to show is that our ownership. As in fact, we belong to our shareholder, our main shareholder is Mitsui, which is quite a significant Japanese group who has a participation in many different area of the industry, but also we have two other shareholders, which are Niso, Nippon Soda, and Kumiai. And those companies, in fact, they are Japanese company, and they are developing the molecule of the future. And today on the market, on our market, almost 40% of the product, the molecule is coming from Japanese company. So we have let's say a partnership with our shareholder so that we have access to some molecule for let's say the product of the future. Next slide, please. Okay. Next. Yeah. The reason for Certis Europe. As I said, yeah, we are a solution, a flexible, middle-sized company and looking for solution for our customer, of course, but on the market where we are, this market is consolidating actually, and that's what we see. You have all heard about on the news what's happened. Bayer merging with Monsanto, Dow, DuPont, Syngenta merging with Chem China, Chemtura with Agriphar, Aristar, Cheminova. There is really a consolidations on this market. So Certis is actually doing the same, because actually we are currently merging with our sister company in Japan, which is who has the same shareholder. It's called Spice Urania in Germany, and now we are currently becoming one company to cover more market. It's the same as we have also, and maybe next slide, please, so we can see on the map. So and we also have a joint venture in Greece. So what you see in the dark blue is really the historical scope of Certis Europe, where we are covering the main market, Italy, France, Spain, Italy, or the UK, the Benelux. And now we are merging with all the Eastern Europe part. And on top of that, we also have invested in a joint venture with a company to cover all the Baltic market with a Greek company. With a Greek company. So we are currently having a lot of change within the company. Next slide, please. So indeed, why do we need to align our financial forecast with also our S&OP? Is because due to the change of the market environment, so concentration of the competitor, which reduce the R&D capacity, so less and less company, increased registration of the cost of the complexity, and it's also increased the customer expectations because, customer expect more when you are getting bigger. So the market structure and the complexity of it, the complexity of the registrations, some certain actives are registered at European level, but then after, for use at local market, you can also have some specificity, which makes that it's a kind of complex process. On top of that, we are in the agricultural business, and indeed, it's a very volatile market to forecast. It's very difficult. From one day to the other, your supply plan can change, because if suddenly it starts to rain, you know that you will need some molluscide product to make sure that you avoid that you have too many snails eating your plant or things like that. Another element that makes that we really need to be on top of all our forecast is the company organization. We don't own a factory, but we are working with a partner, and their activities is to make the product for us. So what we provide the recipe of the product, we provide all the components to make the product, but indeed, we are not the only one making those products. That's the main activity of those companies. So therefore, planning is a key element. Next slide, please. So what do we do at Certis? We use the S&OP volume information. We use it for the financial plan. So we do a monthly last estimate at item level for the current fiscal year. This is the branch commitment. That's what they come in. It's based on S&OP volume, and we fed the tool with some pricing. The idea is to really increase visibility on the short-term objective and also to have a consolidated view of the current situation, which allows us to react quicker. We also do a 5-year plan at item level, because this is a shareholder requirement. So in order to do so, we base the starting point of our 5-year plan on our S&OP volume for the first year, and for the last 4 years, we use what we included in our previous 5-year plan. We do some branch input, some consolidated review, and what is important to say is that the review, the way we do it now, allows us to do not only at the review at local level, but really at European level. So we have a European approach, a European strategic approach at the time that we do planning. Of course, we also work on registration, cost assumptions. It really increased our visibility on the middle term strategy.
I'll just give a brief explanation on the importance of aligning your financial plan and the operational plan. So basically, during the previous webinars, we've also focused on the supply chain triangle. Basically, if you want to have as good results as possible within your organization, the assumption here is that you need to balance these 3 aspects of service, cost, and cash. Of course, if you want to do a balancing exercise, you need to compare all 3. You need to be able to compare the 3 aspects to each other, which means you need to have a common unit of measure. The most easy one for that would be to have a financial valuation as a basis for the comparison there. Historically, that's quite evident. You can use the actual P&L and balance sheet information to do that. However, to look forward for the future, you need to do this based on outlooks. So also there, doing this exercise also requires you to do some kind of financial planning where you have a financial plan for the future. If you compare the financial plan process versus the operational planning process, there are, of course, similarities. Both will have the goal to create a plan based on assumptions for the future, and that plan should be used as a benchmark for performance. The differences, however, clearly one is focused more on volume, where the other one will focus on value, but also the approach is different, where for the operational planning, you will have more attention for example, the specific article, and then roll that up to a higher level for a product family, for example. Okay, the approach for financial planning will be more top-down, where you are more interested in visiting at the higher level first, and then, if possible or required, to drill down to a lower level. Also, looking at the goals, there are some differences. So what you want to benchmark is also different, where for an operational plan, it's more, okay, what's my execution compared to my plan? And for the financial plan, it's really performance compared to your budget. So how are we doing compared to what the financial results we set out to achieve? Also, the performance and the financial plan is also communicated as a commitment to often shareholders and the board of the company itself. So it's really something a company has to take ownership of and strive to achieve that. And then of course, that also means that there's a different customer for the process. Operational planning process, there the main customer is operations, whereas for your financial planning, the customers are the stakeholders and the shareholders of any company. If we look at how can we integrate or the finance in S&OP, or what is the role of finance in S&OP, if we roughly state, okay, this is the S&OP process, demand planning will provide an unconstrained demand plan to the supply planning process, where you then have a constrained demand plan going to the pre-S&OP meeting, where you can define different scenarios on possibilities about the future. And then these scenarios will be discussed during your executive S&OP meeting. You will take the most likely scenario and then feed it back to all the different steps of your process. Finance can and should probably provide insights, financial insights, and more strategic guidance into each and one of these different steps. So finance has an important role to play in each separate step in this process. But it's not only the input, also finance can benefit from starting, if they want to do a financial budget, starting actually from the consensus plan that has been formulated within the S&OP meeting. Why should you start the financial budget from S&OP? Well, basically, it already includes the results of demand planning and supply planning processes. So demand planning, the information from the market is gathered at quite a detailed level. So you have the whole idea there is to get as good as possible view on the future for your different markets as possible. Also, supply planning will make sure that that plan stays realistic by adding capacity constraints to that. So it's basically the S&OP plan is an accepted version of the truth, which already has created realignment or alignment within the company itself. So that's an ideal starting point, basically, for your financial budgeting exercise. And also, thanks to the bottom-up approach we discussed earlier, okay, you can take the S&OP plan and basically roll it up to any level that you think is appropriate for your budgeting exercise. And next to that, okay, it also allows for activity-based budgeting, but that's more relevant for a specific set of, I think, more niche accounting principles. The S&OP already takes the likelihood of opportunities into account. So basically, if you say that the financial budget is a commitment you are taking as a company towards your stakeholders and your shareholders, okay, then the S&OP is basically a good place to start, because it is the result of a consensus meeting to determine which is the most realistic plan that they can commit to. So already it's a good starting point there. Of course, even if you start your financial plan from your S&OP at one point during the year, it's hardly likely that everything will materialize exactly as planned. So basically, another advantage of linking your financial planning to the operational plan, to your S&OP, is the fact that by incorporating it, okay, any deviation from your budget will also help trigger a discussion during your S&OP meeting. And it will also help structure those meetings and provide more meaningful input there. Another advantage is that if you start from an S&OP plan, which is a living plan, it will evolve month by month or even week by week, depending on what the frequency of your process is. You can quickly create a latest estimate. So that's basically checking what has been achieved, what are the actuals up to year to date, let's say, and combine that with the latest outlook in your S&OP. And therefore, you can then measure the effect or the difference with the budget and your latest estimates. Another scenario where you have more of a two-plan state, where you have one S&OP plan and one plan created specifically by finance, completely separate from any S&OP exercise. You can then ask the question, which one of the two should then be used for KPIs, for personal performance indicators, and so on. So if you take this example, it's more of a thought provoker. I'm the product manager for product family 007, and my plan or my version actually landed me at 132,000 euros at the end of the year. There's another financial plan that states, no, at the end of the year we will be at 151,000. So what's the evaluation of that product manager if at the end of the year he attained his results, so the 132,000? That's just something to think about. Okay, what should the company do in this case? Another advantage here is, for example, going back to the supply planning exercises, you can create very distinct scenarios, and instead of just comparing operational impact and operational decisions, you can also basically compare the bottom line. So for one and the same production volume, I can have three options. For example, I'm at my limit of my capacity. Scenario one, I still do it in my own factory and I will use overtime. Option two, I will outsource it to another company. And option three is I will keep it within the company, but outsource it to a different plant. Production volumes will be the same, fixed costs, I still have the same machines, but the variable costs can be different or will be different. So that will each time lead you to a different bottom line, which is again an additional tool to evaluate different potential scenarios. So basically the integration of finance, there's different approaches. You can use it as an output only. So that's translating a volume plan into values by using standard prices. So it's quite basic, but it's already a good step towards doing the integration with finance. And there's something we see as a potential challenge in a lot of companies is, okay, standard price sounds nice, but what is now our standard price? And that's typically something then that requires a lot of discussion and a lot of openness from all sides to determine, okay, what will we now use as the standard price in our exercises? If you use financial information both as an input and an output, okay, you're no longer only balancing demand and supply in a sort of vacuum. You always have the impact of other external influences as well. For example, take a recent example is trade tariffs that are being imposed suddenly. That might change a lot in your approach or have a big impact on how you're dealing with things. So there, the main bottom line is either one, if you want to do only output or input and output, the goal or the message there is to really include finance early in the process so that there you can come to a good decision as soon as possible. This is also more for information. That's the result of an inquiry made by Insights into the reasons why people find their S&OP process effective, yes or no. And here one of the reasons somebody linked or stated my S&OP process is very effective is because the forecast from S&OP drives both supply chain and financial projections. Somebody else says, okay, my S&OP process is effective, so not super effective. Why? Because financial components are lagging behind, or another one was it's too much about the units. And for example, a neutral S&OP effectiveness was, okay, it only had limited ability to support scenario and financial analysis. Just a couple of examples of feedback from companies who thought, okay, we have a very effective or a neutral S&OP process. So in general, to summarize, the potential of the integration is to basically increase your value of the S&OP process. Because if you do a translation to value, that's always easier to understand than if you're talking about units or kilograms or cases. It's a language that's more widely understood, so that the audience increases, and also both the financial and the operational processes will benefit. They'll have bigger accuracy thanks to the input from both sides. As mentioned, you can do more in-depth scenario analysis. And also the benefit of partnering up with finance is that it can also bring important insights in risk and strategy to the table for your S&OP and operational decisions. A couple of challenges or pitfalls: information that's lost in translation. So as I mentioned, it's not always easy to do the translation or to find a correct conversion rate, let's say. And also you need to know very well for each article what's now my base unit of measure that I have my forecast in, so that you can use the correct translation. Also completeness of information there. Okay, how far do we go in involving or integrating finance? Do we include depreciations and provisions and so on? And of course, data discrepancies. If within finance, they're always referring to product families, and in operations, it's something they're referring to product groups, and the two do not match to each other. Okay, it will also be difficult to have an aligned plan on both sides. So it's also a very important thing to be wary about. The last slide is more the level of insight compared to the data complexity. With limited complex data, you will get additional insight, but it will be limited. The more you push the level of insight you want to get, the more complex the data will become that you need to interface to get it. So it's always a trade-off between adding net revenue or net revenue, including promotions, rebates, and so on. Okay, it will give you more insights, but it will also be more complex to manage that.
Okay. Yeah, thank you. Next slide, please. So the experience as Certis, we started in 2014 to implement Arqiva. We implemented the S&OP modules. We started by doing also the financial last estimate in it, and 1 year after we decided to do also a 5-year plan. So it was time for us to implement a different tool, because previously everything was, as many companies, was supported by Excel. Excel is a great tool, but at the end, it's not the best in terms of sustainability, and you encounter a lot of issue with accuracy of data. So we needed to have a tool dedicated for supply chain. That was the first idea. But as we were also looking at a financial, let's say, estimate directly out of this tool, we have been building it directly in Arqiva. We had many learning at that time, because at the time we did this first implementation, our business unit were acting independently. I mean, even before we started to now we are in a position where we are merging with our sister company in Germany, but initially each of the branch was acting independently. And in fact, we realized during our first implementation that a tool is only supporting an existing process. A tool is not going to define or establish for you a process. So that's why it's very important before starting this project is to really to align the process and to redefine everybody's role and responsibility within the company, including, of course, all the master data, because nowadays everything is connecting to the master data. Next slide, please. Okay. At the end, nowadays, 4 or 5 years after, we have this acceptance of the change, and it's really a change of culture within the company. I mean, as I said previously, now we inform our branch that they just need to adjust what needs to be adjusted. But initially, the change of culture is to tell to a branch a commercial entity, okay, we need to understand what is the situation on your market. Please provide us all your assumptions so we can do a better planning, even if it's up and down, but at least we need to we need to have visibility if you want a European supply chain to supply the right product to the market. So therefore, it took us some time, but today I think that everybody has changed, and we have an easy process within Certis, but which means that easy does not mean that you have to do it every month. So we tend to do actually 10 last estimate per year, per fiscal year. That's a little bit too much, and I think that now we are aiming around maybe 7 per year, only when it's needed. So that was my point. Next slide, please. Yep. Okay. Thank you. Next step. Yeah. Okay. The next steps now. So we in August last year we started then to upgrade Archiva with one of the latest versions, and so now we are currently testing, and we are live with our historical scope of branches. In early June, which means very soon, in 2 weeks, we are going to finalize the integration of some of all the new integrated business. So it's all the Eastern Europe country except Germany for the time being. It's really a step-by-step approach where we integrate people, all our different business units. And in the middle June 2018, we are going to develop the new 5-year plan module. And the same, the starting point is going to base really on the latest S&OP forecast. And for the next coming 4 years, we use what we have been putting, what was including in our last year 5-year plan. Doing such a way allows us to really being able, even at an early stage of a budget, where you compare what you have been submitted last year in your 5-year plan with the latest S&OP data. So that's something, it allows us to really have the latest financial information, even at the moment that we prepare a 5-year plan. So that's one really of the benefits of it.
Next, okay, we'll answer a couple of questions. One of the questions is, how do you focus the attention of the people who have to review the financial LE on the correct SKUs, or how do they know which articles and or branches to focus on?
That's a very good question. It often depends on the capacity and availability of our tolling site, either toller or the supplier. Because some active ingredient took really long time to come, because if they come from Asia by boat, you know, it takes time. And as I mentioned earlier, our market is very volatile. So we really, on some specific product, we really try to anticipate as much as we can. So sometimes it can happen that we ask 6 months in advance a firm forecast from the branches, so that we make sure that we can deliver the product. So it often happens that before starting a specific S&OP cycle, we inform in advance the whole what we call the business planner, we have the person in charge of the supply chain, that they have to communicate to all their branches that for this S&OP cycle, we need absolutely to, they need to commit on a forecast for certain type of product. It's mainly driven by supply chains, either for tolling capacities or really, let's say, lead time or technical issue of delivering a specific active ingredient or component. That's really what is driving it. Otherwise, we have installed a frozen period to avoid a change, because we cannot. So we try to make sure that they plan as much as they can long-term all the product. We aim for Initially, it was an 18 months forecast. Today, we are more around 10, 12 months of forecast, but we also had to install a frozen period. So that's also a way with this frozen period for them to focus on the next coming 3 months. Yeah, I forgot to mention that the frozen period is for the next coming 3 months. So they know that if they make a change within the frozen period, we are not certain that we are going to be able to deliver the product to them. So that's why we put the emphasis really on that part, on forecasting, by explaining them that it's really to be able to deliver the product on time. So, yeah.
All right, no, thanks.
Yeah.
Another question, how long did it take to really achieve alignment between finance and operations?
Yeah, it's difficult to put a timeline on this. I think it's not a question of time. I think it's more a question of sponsor within the company. It's the change culture within the company, because you only need one. If one of your branch does not respect the process, then it could be really critical for the whole supply chains. So it's really a change of culture within a company. It's really aligning expectations. So there is a lot, when at the time that we implement our project, it was about explaining to the branches or commercial unit what we were expecting from them and why we were doing it. It's a lot of communication, convincing. So it's very difficult to put a timeline. I would say at Certis, we started really, it took us 2 years. If you want to, honest answer, yeah, we are around 2 years since I'm in the position that we are working on it, and that, but a lot of communications with the branch. Yeah.
All right, and then a follow-up question, who was a sponsor for your initiative, supply chain or finance?
Management board.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, it was really driven by the management board, this change, because it was a complete, in fact, when before everybody was acting independently, so the person who were doing supply chain, they were reporting locally. So of course they were looking at their own performance or their own stock at the branch. They wanted to make sure that each branch would get their product. But for all the product which we have produced, they were produced centrally by another entity, and there was a lot of how do you say tension between those two departments, because the local would not understand why we would not produce so quickly for them, but they would not also understand our constraints. So what we did, there was a big change in the company. We decided to change the reporting line of all the people doing supply chains. So now they all report to the European organizations. So they have double hats, in fact, at Certis, is that at the moment in the S&OP, they clearly look at what is needed for their branch. So then they are really customer driven at that moment. And after, when it's time of doing the S&OP, they take another approach, which is more European. What do we need to do for Certis Europe? And then they work on production for European demand. So that's why we have changed the reporting line, which make that we have a little bit opened their scope of responsibility, so they feel more involved. They understand what we are doing within the company, and they are kind of the ambassador of the supply chain within their local branch. So it has really improved a lot the communication and the understanding also at local level. That's really, yeah, a lot about aligning expectations. Yeah, so a lot has to do with communications. Indeed.
All right, thank you. Yep. Another question, how often are you doing the unit level 5-year forecast?
Oh, it's once a year we do it, but it's a long process. Usually it starts in September and we end up in December.
Okay. So
because we are several rounds of review, but we do it once a year. So yeah, because we really have now each branch prepare his own. First, we send assumptions for the year that needs to be included in the budget. Once those assumptions are done, then they have some meeting with marketing and the sales team. They decide about product strategy at European level. Then the branch submit their own budget. Once their budget is submitted, it's after a review at European level by the portfolio. You know, the slide I was showing with the arable, vines, soft chemical, and so on. That's those persons in charge of this type of product that review the assumption and see if what has been previously discussed is really properly reflected in the budget. So it's a long process, yeah, but once a year.
All right, thanks. And the last question, because I think this relates to the fact that the users can change for example, the cost price, the unit cost forecast in that case. Do you follow up what the accuracy is of the numbers that are given in there? And
yes, I still have I still sometimes put my finance hat back on my head, and yes, we do. We do in fact check if the assumption have been properly which have been previously communicated are properly reflected in the budget. It can happen that that's not the case and that there is a good reason behind it. But my role, but that's up to management to decide if it's valid, yes or not. But my role for this type of exercise is to check that the assumption has been properly reflected. So yes, we do check.
All right, good. Well, we tried to take a couple of questions from all the people asking them. We've received a bunch more, but we'll answer those more on email when we send also the webinar presentation.
Okay.
All right. Let's close it off here then. Thanks everybody for joining, and thanks especially to you, Romain, for hosting it.